The sky burned with colors of fire as the Dragon Queen flew alone over the mountains. Her wings were huge, stretching across the sky like dark clouds, and her scales shimmered in red and gold. But even their beauty could not hide the sadness in her eyes. She had lost her young, her hatchlings, and her heart ached with a grief so deep it felt like a part of her was gone. She had once ruled a vast territory, full of dragons who looked up to her and followed her commands. Her children had been her pride, little sparks of life she had cared for since the moment they hatched. Now that joy was gone. The nests were empty, the mountains silent, and every echo of her roar seemed to bounce back only loneliness. The winds carried her high above the cliffs, and she let out a long, mournful cry. The sound rolled across the valley, rattling trees and startling birds, but it brought no answer. No tiny chirps, no happy squeals of young dragons returning home. Only silence. She tried to remember the bright moments, the playful games in the clouds, the way the hatchlings would curl against her chest at night, warm and soft. But the memories were now painful, sharp like broken glass. She landed on a jagged peak, her claws digging into the stone. Her breath came in heavy gusts, misting in the cold air. Even here, far from the valleys, she could feel the emptiness pressing on her. Other dragons had visited her, trying to comfort her, but they soon left, unable to break the wall of sadness around her. They called her strong, fearless, the Dragon Queen, but even queens could cry, even dragons could feel loss. She thought about the storm that had taken her children. It had been a strange storm, more violent than anything she had seen. Lightning had split the sky, winds had whipped the mountains, and the earth had trembled. She had tried to protect them, circling the nest, shielding them with her wings, but the storm had been too strong. When it ended, the young ones were gone. She had searched for days, calling out their names, following tracks and signs, but nothing had led her to them. The world had become a place of shadows and echoes, where even her mighty strength seemed useless. Night fell and the stars shone cold and distant. She curled her massive body around the peak, trying to find some comfort in the wind, some warmth in the chill, but nothing could reach her heart. Every movement felt heavy, every beat of her wings slow and painful. Her grief was a weight she could not shake. Even hunting seemed meaningless. Even flying felt hollow. Yet, despite her sorrow, she could not completely stop watching the world below. The forests, the rivers, the mountains, they moved on, alive and vibrant, as if the universe did not notice her pain. Occasionally, she saw creatures scurrying in the woods, animals going about their lives, and a small part of her wondered about them. How did they survive without someone to care for them? How did they stay brave in a world full of dangers? She did not know, but she envied them a little. One evening, as she gazed across the horizon, her eyes caught a small movement far below. A tiny figure walking alone in the valley, careful and light. It was a human boy, small and fragile compared to her massive form, but he moved with a steady courage that surprised her. For a moment she felt something she had not felt in a long time, a spark of curiosity. She had not cared for humans before. They were strange, tiny, fragile creatures, often afraid of dragons. But this one seemed different. He did not run. He did not hide. He walked as if he belonged to the world he moved through, unafraid of anything, even something as powerful as her. She tilted her head, wings folding slightly as she watched him. Something about him felt familiar, like a thread she had forgotten but still remembered. The Dragon Queen rose into the sky again, silent this time, her sharp eyes following the boy. She did not understand why, but she wanted to see more. Perhaps it was just a distraction from her grief, a tiny flicker to break the darkness that had filled her heart. Or perhaps, deep down, she felt the possibility of something new, something unexpected, waiting to cross her path. The wind roared past her, carrying the scent of earth and fire and the strange, tiny smell of the human below. She circled once, then twice high above him, feeling the power in her wings but also the hollow ache in her chest. She did not know what the boy was doing, where he was going, or if he would survive in the wild world of mountains and storms. But something told her that meeting him would change something, though she did not yet know what. For the first time in many days, a tiny ember of hope flickered inside her, like the first glow of sunrise after a long night. The Dragon Queen, alone and grieving, had no idea that her life, and perhaps the lives of her lost young, was about to change forever. The boy walked carefully through the thick forest, his small boots crunching over fallen leaves and broken branches. He was alone, carrying a worn satchel with a few tools, a notebook and some dried food. His hair was messy, his clothes dusty, but his eyes were sharp and full of curiosity. He had traveled far from his home planet, landing on this strange world full of towering mountains, glowing plants and creatures he had never seen before. Every step was a challenge. Strange insects crawled across the ground, birds with glowing feathers circled above, and the wind whispered through the trees as if warning him to leave. Yet the boy did not run. He moved carefully, always observing, always thinking. He had learned long ago that survival was not about strength, but about using your mind. As he walked, he noticed broken branches and claw marks on the rocks. They were huge, far bigger than anything a normal animal could leave. His heart beat faster, but he did not panic. Instead, he took out his notebook and sketched the marks, making notes about their size and shape. Perhaps they belonged to a dragon, he thought. The stories he had read about dragons on this planet were incredible, but he had never seen one before. The forest began to thin, opening up into a rocky valley. Here the wind was colder and the ground was harder. He noticed a faint echo of something above him, a shadow moving quickly over the cliffs. He froze, looking up. A massive creature soared across the sky, its wings beating like thunder. Its scales shimmered red and gold, and it let out a long, mournful roar that shook the valley. The boy's eyes widened. A dragon. And not just any dragon. He recognized it instantly from the old sketches he had studied. It was a queen, huge and majestic, with power in every movement. Most humans would have been terrified, but the boy took a deep breath and stayed calm. He remembered the lessons his father had taught him. Fear is natural, but courage is choosing to act anyway. Watch, think, and then move. He crouched behind a rock and watched the dragon carefully. She looked alone, moving slowly, almost as if she were sad. His heart ached for her. He decided to follow her from a distance. Quietly, carefully, he moved over rocks and through shrubs, making sure not to be seen. He noticed her wounds from the storm, scratches on her wings, a small cut near her eye, and he felt a strange mix of fear and sympathy. She was powerful, but she was hurting. She needed help, though he knew it would be dangerous to offer it. Hours passed and the sun began to set. The boy needed to rest, but he did not want to lose sight of the dragon. He found a small cave nearby, just big enough for him to sit and stay hidden. From there, he could see her resting on a high cliff, her massive body curled protectively as if trying to hold her sorrow close. The boy opened his notebook and began drawing her, careful to capture every detail, the curve of her horns, the shimmer of her scales, the sadness in her eyes. He wished he could do more than just watch. His mind raced with ideas. He had some tools in his bag, ropes, hooks, and a small medical kit. Perhaps he could help her heal some of her wounds. Perhaps he could even find a way to help her young. He did not know how, but he felt that humans, though small and fragile, had something dragons did not: creativity, courage, and clever hands that could solve problems no matter how impossible. Night fell and the dragon slept, her chest rising and falling slowly. The boy lit a tiny lantern, careful to keep it low and hidden. He ate a small piece of dried meat, thinking about the stories of dragons and humans he had read. Humans were not supposed to survive on this planet alone. Dragons were fierce and dangerous, and yet here he was, alive, observing one of the most powerful creatures in the world. He wondered why he had been sent here. Was it luck? Or was it something more? Something in the universe pushing him toward this dragon? Suddenly he heard a rustle nearby. A small, frightened creature ran past him, but it froze, sensing the dragon above. The boy held his breath. He realized that the dragon was more than just large and powerful. She was protective, wise, and aware of everything in her world. If he wanted to survive and help her, he would need to earn her trust. He could not approach recklessly. He needed patience. He needed courage. He needed cleverness. The boy sat quietly thinking. He was small, yes, but he had survived worse challenges. He had built machines, solved puzzles, and traveled alone through lands humans were never meant to walk. And now this dragon, the queen herself, was part of his path. He did not yet know if she would accept him, or if he would even survive her first roar, but he felt something stir inside him: hope. And hope, he knew, could be as powerful as fire. He looked up at the night sky, glittering with stars, and whispered softly, almost to himself, "I will help you. I promise." The dragon shifted slightly, lifting her massive head, her glowing eyes catching the boy's faint lantern light. She did not attack, did not roar. She simply watched. And in that quiet moment, a connection began to form. A fragile, delicate thread between human and dragon, born not of fear or power, but of courage, curiosity, and the will to act. For the first time, the boy felt that maybe he could make a difference. Maybe his small hands, clever mind, and brave heart could change the fate of the queen and her lost young. And somewhere deep in the dragon's chest, something shifted too, an old, heavy sorrow feeling a tiny flicker of curiosity. The journey had just begun and neither of them knew how far it would go, but the boy was ready. The next morning the boy woke to the soft glow of dawn. He had spent the night watching the dragon from a distance, careful not to move too much. She had not left and that alone surprised him. Most dragons were unpredictable and most would have attacked a human on sight. But not her. She stayed, almost as if she sensed he meant no harm. The boy packed a small bag with some water and a few tools, then crept closer. He moved slowly, keeping low to the ground, trying to be as quiet as a shadow. The dragon lay across a wide cliff, her wings partially folded, her head resting on her claws. She had scars from the storm, deep lines across her wings and shoulders, and he noticed how tired she looked. Even the largest, strongest creatures could feel pain, he thought. He wanted to help her. He wanted to do something to show that humans were not just small, weak creatures. He carefully removed a cloth from his bag, dipped it in water from a small flask, and began approaching a cut on her foreleg. His hands were steady. He had treated injured creatures before and he trusted his own skills. The dragon lifted her head slightly, glowing eyes watching him. For a moment he froze. One wrong move and she could crush him with a single flick of her tail. But she did not move, not even a muscle, just watched with a curious, cautious gaze. The boy whispered softly, "I won't hurt you. I just want to help." Slowly he knelt beside her. He cleaned the wound, his hands gentle but careful. The dragon flinched at the touch, a low rumble escaping her throat, but she did not attack. She seemed to understand in some deep, ancient way that he meant no harm. For a long moment they stayed like that, human and dragon, two very different creatures connected in silence. When he finished he stepped back, holding his hands out to show he had nothing else. The dragon lowered her head and sniffed the air around him. Then, surprisingly, she nuzzled his shoulder lightly with her massive snout. The boy felt the warmth of her scales, rough yet comforting. It was the first time she had touched him in any way other than a threat. His heart pounded. He had earned her trust. The boy smiled softly, feeling both relief and pride. "See? We can help each other," he whispered. He wanted to tell her more, but words seemed small compared to the moment. He could feel the intelligence in her eyes, the depth of her grief, and he realized she was more than just a giant predator. She was a mother, hurting, and strong in ways no human could fully understand. He decided to try something bold. He opened his notebook and drew a picture of her hatchlings, trying to remember the stories he had read about them. Tiny dragons curled together, playful and alive. He showed the drawing to the queen. For a long moment she stared at it. Then, slowly she lowered her massive head closer, looking at the images. The boy felt a shiver of hope. Perhaps she remembered them. Perhaps she had not given up entirely. They sat together for hours. The boy spoke softly about what he knew of the world, about creatures that lived in forests and mountains, about humans who were small but clever and brave. The dragon listened, tilting her head, sometimes letting out low rumbles as if responding. Slowly, a connection formed between them, not of words but of understanding. He could see her sorrow, but also a spark of curiosity, a flicker of trust that had not existed before. The boy realized something important. Humans were fragile, yes, but they had something dragons did not: ideas, creativity, the ability to think beyond strength and instinct. He could solve problems that brute force could not. And the dragon, with her power and knowledge of the world, could protect and guide him. Together they could find her lost hatchlings. Even the small things mattered. The boy offered her some food he had brought, dried meat from another planet. She sniffed it suspiciously, then took it gently, careful not to hurt him. He laughed softly. "See? We can share," he said. That made her rumble, almost like a laugh of her own. It was small, but it was progress. As the sun began to set, he prepared a small fire nearby, careful to keep it low so as not to frighten her. The dragon watched the flames flicker, the boy's small hands working calmly. He realized that survival was not just about strength, it was about trust, understanding, and courage. And he felt a growing pride that humans, even small ones, could touch the hearts of the mightiest creatures. When night fell, the boy curled up near his fire, and the dragon settled beside the cliff, her massive wings creating a protective wall around him. For the first time he slept without fear, and for the first time in weeks the queen rested with a little less sorrow. She still mourned, still remembered, but she had allowed a human to be near her, and that was something new. In the quiet of the alien night, under glowing stars, the first bond between human and dragon was formed. One was small and clever, the other massive and powerful, yet both understood something fundamental. They could help each other, survive together, and perhaps in time even heal old wounds. The boy dreamed of adventure, of solving the mystery of the missing hatchlings. And the queen high above dreamed too, not just of loss but of hope. The first step had been taken. And neither of them knew how far it would lead. The next morning the boy woke early, listening to the soft wind across the mountains. The dragon queen was already awake, stretching her massive wings, the light from the rising sun making her scales glow like molten gold. She looked down at him with those deep, glowing eyes, and for the first time he felt no fear at all. He knew she would not harm him. Somehow he had earned her trust. They began their journey to find her lost hatchlings. The boy walked carefully along the rocky paths, while the dragon flew above, occasionally swooping down to guide him or clear obstacles with a flap of her wings. The valley was vast and dangerous. Sharp cliffs, rushing rivers, and strange creatures waited in every corner. But the boy had something the dragon did not: human cleverness. He studied the terrain, reading tracks, noticing broken branches and claw marks. Each clue told him something about where the hatchlings might have gone. At one point they came to a deep canyon, its walls jagged and steep. The boy pointed to marks on the rocks, tiny scratches and scuffing near the edge. "They were here," he said softly. "They climbed down the rocks, maybe to escape the storm." The dragon queen growled low in her throat, a mixture of hope and worry. She had been so certain they were gone, but now there was a chance. A small, fragile chance, but enough to spark determination. They continued, carefully moving through forests where the sunlight barely reached the ground. Strange predators watched from the shadows, their eyes glowing in the dim light. The boy's heart pounded, but he did not run. He set traps with ropes and sticks, simple but clever devices that slowed the creatures without harming them. The dragon watched in surprise. He was small, yes, but his mind was sharp. He could solve problems that brute strength alone could not. As they traveled, the boy and the dragon learned to work together. When a river blocked their path, he built a makeshift bridge using fallen logs, while she lifted heavier obstacles with her wings. When a cliff seemed impossible to climb, he tied ropes to her horns and wings, using her strength and his ingenuity to reach the top. Each obstacle showed the queen that humans were clever and brave in ways that even dragons could not match. During one tense moment, a pack of alien predators attacked. The boy froze for a heartbeat, but then quickly devised a plan. He lured the creatures into a narrow gorge where the dragon could swoop down and strike safely. The predators tried to escape, but they could not outsmart the boy's traps. The queen fought with power and precision, and together they defeated the threat without serious harm. Afterward, the dragon let out a low rumble that sounded almost like a laugh. The boy smiled. He knew she was impressed, not just by her own power but by his courage and cleverness. Hours passed and exhaustion began to set in. The boy's arms ached, his legs trembled from climbing, but he pressed on. The dragon noticed and lowered him to rest on a safe cliff, curling her body protectively around him. For the first time he felt fully safe, not just from predators but from the world itself. He realized that humans were not only clever, they could survive by thinking ahead, by adapting, and by finding allies in unexpected places. Finally they reached a hidden valley. The boy's eyes widened as he saw the signs: small footprints, tiny claw marks, and scraps of feathers. The hatchlings had been here. But the valley was dangerous, with sharp rocks and a fast-moving river cutting through it. The dragon queen's roar echoed, calling out to her children, but no answer came. The boy placed a hand on her massive claw and whispered, "We'll find them. I know it." She looked at him, and for the first time her glowing eyes held more than grief. They held trust, hope, and a quiet respect. The boy began examining the area carefully, thinking like a human should. He noticed broken branches pointing toward a small cave hidden behind the rocks. The hatchlings had gone there to hide. He gestured to the queen, and she lowered herself to the ground, silent and patient. Together, human and dragon approached the cave, moving carefully so as not to scare the young ones inside. Inside the cave they found the hatchlings, small, trembling but alive. The boy gasped and whispered softly, "You're okay, you're okay." The dragon queen's roar shook the valley, not with anger but with joy and relief. She gently nudged the boy, a gesture of gratitude, and then turned to her young, wrapping them carefully with her massive wings. The hatchlings chirped and squeaked, climbing onto her scales, finally safe. The boy watched, heart swelling. He realized something important. Humans may be small and fragile, but they could solve problems that the strongest could not. Bravery, cleverness, and courage could change the course of life itself. He had done something no other human had done. He had worked with a dragon to save her children. He was small, yes, but his mind and heart had made a difference. The queen looked at him once more, her eyes glowing with gratitude. The bond between them was stronger now, forged through danger, trust, and teamwork. She had learned something too: power alone was not enough. Even the mightiest dragon could not always solve every problem. Sometimes, it took a human touch, a small, clever, brave mind, to find a way forward. The boy smiled, exhausted but proud. The journey was not over, but they had found the hatchlings, and that was the most important thing. For the first time he felt truly part of this world, not as a visitor but as someone who could make a real difference. And somewhere in the dragon's heart, hope burned brighter than it had in weeks. The journey to truth was almost complete, and both human and dragon had learned that together, they could face anything. The dragon queen carefully lifted her young from the hidden cave, wrapping them in her massive wings. Their small bodies trembled, weak from hunger and fright, but alive. The boy knelt nearby, watching with awe as the queen's eyes glowed with joy and relief. He had never seen such power mixed with tenderness. The most terrifying creature in the world was now a mother, gentle and caring, her grief replaced with the fierce love of her hatchlings. The hatchlings chirped and nuzzled her scales, climbing onto her wings and curling around her massive neck. She roared, not with anger or sorrow but with triumph, a sound that echoed across the mountains and valleys. The boy felt it deep in his chest, a vibration that reminded him of the storm that had once taken the hatchlings. But now the storm had passed. He had helped bring them back, and he felt a warm pride he had never known before. The dragon queen turned her glowing eyes toward him, and the boy felt her immense intelligence weighing on him, not in threat but in recognition. She lowered her head and nudged him gently with her snout, careful not to crush him. The gesture was simple yet full of meaning: gratitude, trust, and a bond that went beyond words. The boy smiled, understanding what she could not say aloud. He had saved her children, and in doing so, he had earned her respect. The boy's heart raced as he thought about how far he had come. He had started as a small, fragile human in a vast, dangerous world, unsure if he could survive. Yet his courage, his cleverness, and his careful planning had guided him through storms, predators, and cliffs. He realized that humans were underestimated not because they were weak, but because their strength was hidden in their minds, their hearts, and their determination. Even the mightiest dragons needed more than power, they needed courage, and he had shown it. The queen rumbled low in her throat, a sound of approval and relief. She lifted her hatchlings into the air, her wings beating powerfully, carrying them toward safety. The boy watched them soar, the wind whipping past him and the sun glinting on their scales. The hatchlings chirped happily, tiny sparks of life that had returned from the edge of danger. The queen glided over the cliffs, her massive shadow falling across the valleys, and for a moment, the boy felt like he was looking at a living mountain, strong and majestic, yet full of love. But the journey was not just for the hatchlings. The boy knew that their bond had changed everything. The dragon queen had seen something in him, something that only humans had: courage combined with cleverness, the ability to think, plan, and act when brute strength alone could not succeed. He had proven that small beings could make a difference in a world of giants, and that humans, even fragile ones, could touch the hearts of the strongest creatures. The boy felt the wind against his face as he followed the queen and her hatchlings at a safe distance. He had no wings, no scales, no power like hers, but he had something equally strong: a mind that could solve problems, hands that could act, and a heart brave enough to face what others feared. Every step he had taken, every risk he had faced, had led to this moment. He had done something that mattered. He had made a difference. As the day faded into evening, the queen landed on a high plateau, the hatchlings nestled safely among rocks and trees. She turned to the boy once more, and this time he noticed something new in her eyes: respect. Not fear, not anger, but respect. She lowered her head and allowed him to touch her snout gently. He smiled, feeling a warmth he had never felt before. It was a bond forged through courage, trust, and a shared goal. The boy looked at the hatchlings now chirping and playing and felt a quiet pride. He had saved lives not with strength, but with his heart and mind. He had shown that humans, though small and fragile, could achieve great things. And the Dragon Queen had seen it, understood it, and acknowledged it. He realized that this was what HFY truly meant. Humans, with their intelligence and courage, could face any challenge, even among creatures far stronger than themselves. The queen rumbled again, this time low and soft, as if thanking him for everything. The boy nodded, understanding the language of gratitude without words. He had crossed dangerous lands, faced unknown threats, and gained the trust of the most powerful creature in the world. And he had done it not by fighting, but by thinking, acting carefully, and believing in himself. The sun set behind the mountains, casting golden light across the valley. The hatchlings chirped happily, the queen rested with pride, and the boy stood tall, small but mighty in his own way. He knew his journey was far from over. There would always be more challenges, more adventures, more mysteries in the vast world around him. But for now he had proven that courage, cleverness, and a strong heart could change the fate of even the greatest dragons. And as he watched the queen take flight with her hatchlings, soaring toward safety and freedom, the boy understood something more important than any story or lesson he had ever known. Humans were small, yes, but their bravery and mind could shape worlds. They could be heroes even in places where giants roamed. For the dragon queen, the hatchlings, and the lone human boy, a new chapter had begun. One of hope, trust, and the knowledge that even the smallest creatures could leave a mark on the greatest of worlds. And somewhere deep in his chest the boy felt it, a quiet, fierce pride. He had done something incredible. He had saved lives, earned trust, and shown that humans were truly special. The mountains echoed with the sound of wings, the calls of young dragons, and the quiet confidence of a small human who had changed everything. And the world, vast and dangerous as it was, felt a little brighter because of him.